Most of you are probably thinking of using ATAC in austere, remote, wilderness environments doing rugged military-type operations, which is what ATAC was built for, and it excels at that. Connecting a bunch of ATAC devices together with digital military radios like this is kind of awesome, but they tend to be very expensive and finicky, and while they connect to ATAC together pretty well, they also sort of invite comment when you use them on, I don't know, sort of low-key, more urban operations. Think more, you know, Jack Bauer or James Bond type stuff. TAC is actually really good at that. I, right now, have ATAC running on my phone, and I have comms in my ear right here, and I can even see what waypoints people are dropping on my watch. And I have some cameras out front that show me feeds of stuff that I can't see through these windows, and it's all running on a bunch of off-the-shelf stuff inside of this briefcase. This briefcase has stuff that James Bond's Q branch couldn't even imagine back in the 1960s.
Flat throwing knife. Press that button there. Now she comes. Inside the case, you'll find an AR-7 folding sniper's rifle, .25 caliber, with an infrared telescopic sight.
And open ordinarily?
Everything inside of this briefcase, how did that get in there? Everything inside of this briefcase is commercially available and extremely affordable, and yet very sophisticated. Would I trade this advanced 21st century briefcase full of integrated communications technology for the one in 1960s Dr. No? Yes, in a heartbeat, because in addition to a little bit of bullets and a knife, there were 50 gold sovereigns in that briefcase.
Then if you pull out these straps, inside are 50 gold sovereigns, 25 in either side.
That's like 30 grand in today's money. This is way, way less than that. But technically this is too overpowered for James Bond, because he's not really a teams guy, he's more of a lone wolf. He is sophisticated and urbane. He is practically undetectable.
You'd be surprised the amount of wear and tear that goes on out there in the field.
Now Bond, James Bond, doesn't usually coordinate with a team, but I do. I want to be able to use ATAC's communication capabilities on top of the mapping capabilities. In the last video, I talked about how you connect different ATAC devices together using the internet and VPNs when they're on different networks. But for this video, I want to talk about doing something off-grid. Again, your mind probably goes to the military radios, and we'll get there. Right now, I want to talk about very simple battery-powered Wi-Fi routers. So now we have this Wi-Fi network. It's running off of battery power. It doesn't need anybody else's infrastructure, and it is connecting our different ATAC devices, anything that we would like to use, including battery-powered cameras. This camera connects to the Wi-Fi, the devices connect to the Wi-Fi, and we can see our camera feeds inside of ATAC. Now, this is a travel router that is not very powerful, which means it doesn't give us a ton of range. And there's a bunch of different ways that we could extend that range. We could always get some of these little extenders, some of them plug directly into wall sockets. But generally speaking, we want to run on batteries because we specifically want to have the ability to talk over ATAC when we don't have electricity, when we don't have all of the infrastructure up and running. Now, there are much more capable, high-powered, professional Wi-Fi devices that we are messing with as we speak. Some of the stuff from Microtech that meshes nicely, but for now, this is basically the same principle. This costs you about 30 bucks. It's worth having in your kit. It runs inside of here, and it creates a large bubble where all our devices can communicate. It's not quite as cool or long range as this, but it does have kind of an advantage. In a small town like Centerville, which is a sort of blend of rural and urban, there's not enough Wi-Fi that there's a ton of interference, but there's enough Wi-Fi that these signals don't really stick out. Now, ATAC supports different types of camera feeds. If we did have internet, we could connect to public IP cameras like traffic cams and things like that and see those inside of ATAC. But there's also smaller, cheaper Wi-Fi cameras like this that use their own apps, and you can always kind of multitask inside of Android one way or the other, so they don't necessarily have to live inside of ATAC for them still to be sort of useful. And this Wi-Fi connectivity is not as good as Ethernet, but then again, these different Wi-Fi routers have Ethernet plugs on the back, so you can always connect them to Ethernet-only cameras. And if that's something that you need for intelligence gathering purposes, it's a thing that you can get working on this small network adjacent to ATAC, even if it doesn't entirely live inside. Now, a number of you pointed out in the last video that cell phones are not trustworthy. Even if you turn them into airplane mode, you never know if the cell radios are connecting to cell towers, which is part of the reason that I like tablets. Tablets that don't have those LTE or 5G radios do have Wi-Fi. And so now we have ATAC on admittedly a larger device, but it is one that has some interesting features to it. In addition to being highly ruggedized, this is Samsung's active line. It also has a pen, which is handy for map markup, and it also has a dedicated button that we can program to be a push-to-talk thing for our digital voice stuff. One of the things that I do like about the tablets, in addition to the larger screen is kind of nice for ATAC because there are a lot of different menu items in here, but I still wish people made small tablets like they used to. And small tablets often have micro SD cards, which are very handy if you happen to come across a micro SD card hidden somewhere that contains the mission requirements that you are going to do as a team. You can load all of those things into ATAC offline without internet, direct from local storage. And it isn't just the map data. You can install ATAC directly from an APK and all of the plugins for ATAC directly from APKs if you have them on the device. So being able to carry around ATAC installers, plugin installers, data packs for the different areas where you're going to be working and install those onto different devices as you find them, that is pretty handy too. Now, I mentioned plugins. In addition to being a great mapping tool and a great communication tool, ATAC is also a great host for different plugins. And I mentioned the ability to do push-to-talk voice over the same network that ATAC is sending its other stuff through. And that involves a plugin that you can get from the Google Play Store or your friendly local ATAC dead drop locations. I'm sure you know where those are at. Once you set up the VoIP plugin and allows you to do your push-to-talk audio, there's a bunch of different settings that you can create. You can set up different channels inside of missions, and you can set up different missions that are outside of channels. You can connect it to a Mumble server so that people who are not using the ATAC plugin to talk, but a Mumble server, can talk with people who are in ATAC using the plugin. And it also allows you to have a floating push-to-talk button, which is pretty handy. Not only can I put it in different places on the map, but if I go to a completely different app, like even just my home screen, I still have that push-to-talk button that is there. I can communicate directly with my team from anywhere inside of here. And if I have a programmable button on the side of my device, I can use that. There's also these wireless Bluetooth push-to-talk buttons. If you pair these to your devices, you can stick this thing on your belt, rifle, steering wheel, something like that, and have a really easy, accessible push-to-talk for the voice comms that run through ATAC, and they connect to all the different teams that you already have set up in ATAC. And of course, it is encrypted inside of ATAC, and then hopefully it's also encrypted inside of whatever network you are running it through.
Now pull the top off the pen. Now, with this ultra-sensitive earpiece, you can listen in on the bug.
This earpiece is not fancy James Bond technology. It's literally just, the Samsung earbuds that you can buy at Walmart or Amazon. But it is a kind of miniaturization that James Bond's team could only really dream of back in the 60s. Now everybody has these things, in the same way that almost everybody has smartwatches. This is another piece of distinctly James Bond-esque technology.
The homing device is compatible with the standard issue radio directional finder in your watch, if you haven't lost it.
Using another plugin, you can connect a Garmin watch to ATAC, and it will essentially show you all of the markers on the map that ATAC has on the map that your Garmin has. So something with a old MIP display like this is fairly low resolution. It's a little tricky to sometimes see everything that you want to. It's a good argument for getting one of the newer Epics or OLED style Garmin watches because they have considerably more resolution. But it isn't just seeing stuff on the map. It also gets my heart rate data from the watch and sends it here so that the rest of my team can see that I am still alive. Okay, so now we should be well set up for our mission. We have the multiple devices, they're all talking together. We have voice communication, we even have camera footage, and we have biometric data and covert mapping stuff going on. So now we need to start accumulating some of the actual mission data. It can't all come from secret agent dead drops. You have to assemble some of your mission data yourself. So let's talk about something that happened last year. Last year in a storm, kind of like the one that we're having now, one of the buildings was damaged and it needed to be evacuated, and there were a bunch of things inside of the building that needed to be pulled out. That's the sort of thing where it is really helpful to have some extra data on top of your basic map layer from Google, Bing, or wherever. This building right here is the one that was damaged, and no matter how much we zoom in, we can't really see a whole lot on how we should be organizing our evacuation operation. But if we go into our rubber sheet tool right here, we actually have the ability to put other images on top of this map. This is a quick napkin sketch of the floor plan of that block of buildings, and it doesn't really line up. So just very carefully stretch it into place here, lower the opacity to make sure. Now we have a much better idea of what's going on inside the building structurally and where the doors are that we might want to be using for going in and out. Now it's a pretty simple matter to draw our directions on how we want to bring stuff out and the ways that we want to take people in from the back, some of our different areas that we specifically want to look at, and let's say we want to park the trucks here and here so that there's a pretty good stream of stuff going back and forth. So now we've got a pretty good plan for which doors we want to use for what, where we want to pull stuff in and out, where we want to park the vehicles. Seems pretty solid. Now I can save that. I can save the imagery from the satellites of the square itself. I can save the napkin sketch of the floor plan that I positioned and its coordinates, and I can save everything that I just drew on top into a single zip file that ATAC will load, and I can send that to people over email or through micro SD cards in our secret dead drop locations or on our encrypted wireless network that we are managing ourselves. That works out really well. But what if some of our volunteers, let's say, don't actually have ATAC? They're not, secret agents, and so they're not set up for this sort of thing. There is a tool where I can equip those guys a little bit better for what it is that we are trying to accomplish, and that is the GRG plugin. So here's another high stakes mission, the International Banana Pudding Festival. I've taken this JPEG from their website and I've positioned it directly over the fairgrounds so we can see where to get our festival merch and our food. But more importantly, we're going to try to manage parking a little bit better over here in these fields. I need to be able to get this map to our volunteers, and for that we're going to use this GRG Builder plugin right here, which will export us a PDF file or a JPEG that we can print. So now that that PDF is exported, we can print it out on paper. This paper map plus a walkie-talkie is going to get a volunteer not exactly to where we are with ATAC, but basically on the same page. He doesn't have real-time updates, but we've also created a simpler GRG grid right here. It is great to have military-grade reference systems or UTM grids for navigating over large areas, but for small operations like this, sometimes you just want a battleship map where you can say, the parking lot is full down here at C4, start moving cars into C5. Now, other times you do need real-time communication. When things are a little bit higher stakes, then even the International Banana Pudding Festival and lives are on the line, you do want some of this real-time communication capability. And that's where the WASP plugin comes in. That stands for Wide Area Search plugin. Now in Centerville, we often have flood damage, and this is a really great plugin for indicating which houses might have damage very quickly on the map. And not only are these markers, these are checklist items. All I have to do is click on one of these to decide exactly what details I want to include here. And I can enter the building and begin my search. Now that I am in the building, I get this simpler thing right here. If I find additional hazards, like broken glass, I can really easily mistype those. And then after I've been in the building and completed my search, I'm able to exit the building. This way, the guys who are managing the mission can easily see who is in which building, how long they've been there, and whether or not they need help because they've gotten stuck. Now I can also call for different types of help. I can request anything that is currently in the list of personnel, equipment, or supplies. Either I type it in or it's stuff that we've created ahead of time. And I can also indicate potential victims inside of the house. I've entered 3 potential victims, and now I can confirm that they are non-ambulatory and they need immediate assistance. So now, when we look at this particular building, we can see a lot of different information about it, who's on the scene, how long he's been there, what potential difficulties the people who have been requested to come and help might encounter, and what kind of patients they're going to need to assist. I really like the simplified GUI right here. It would be pretty handy to be able to do different stuff if you were wearing big, heavy gloves. Keep people updated on what's happening on the outside. Let's now exit the building, say it was a partial search. And now everybody can see what needs to happen using these different icons. And all of this is synchronized across everybody that is on the network and using this plugin. This is a really well thought out plugin because I can just drop markers on an entire neighborhood worth of houses really quickly. And then as people begin their searches and they begin finding stuff, all of their feedback appears real-time, instantaneously, and is super easy to see on the map. And that's really where ATAC really excels, when you need to coordinate teams of people and see information really quickly. And not just text information or voice information, but stuff that is really specific to locations and maps. This is a house where we need people to extract patients on this side of the house. This is a house where somebody has been inside for more than 5 minutes. We should check in on them. That is where ATAC really excels. And the WASP plugin is a perfect example of something that is well thought out and accomplishes a lot, even though it's not the kind of mission that James Bond is usually a part of. Now I can think of one plugin that would be really useful for James Bond, and that is the vehicle navigation plugin. He drives a lot of different vehicles, even vehicles he's never seen before. In fact, my theory is that's what his license to kill is really for, all those different vehicles. And as he travels, he occasionally gets lost, which is why he drives tanks through national monuments. And sometimes boats through weddings.
Be joined together. Let him now speak, or else
So having good directions would be useful, and the vehicle navigation system plugin gives you pretty good directions. It allows you to download offline road data, which for Tennessee is less than 100 megabytes, and give you turn-by-turn directions like any GPS unit. But it does something a little bit differently. Instead of pointing you towards specific destinations like Google Maps does, it lets you save routes as primary and alternate infill and exfil routes. And if you get off the route, it takes you back to the route, which is a much more team-based and convoy way of doing navigation than just trying to get to point B. And obviously, it doesn't have all of the features of Google Maps. You cannot search for restaurants and then filter them based on when they're open and how busy they are and reviews, stuff like that. But it does let you put in addresses, and it does let you develop routes and give you the navigation data so that you can get to the places that you are trying to go. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't actually understand how the routing system in VNS works. I know that it works, I know that it's offline, but I just don't have enough roads around here to kind of reverse engineer how it prioritizes things. I'm barely scratching the surface with it in the same way that I'm barely scratching the surface with ATAC, and we're barely scratching the surface of ATAC in this video. I want to recommend to you guys that you go look up S2 Underground and the TAC Syndicate, and I'm going to link to their YouTube channels in the video description because I want you to learn more. I want you to figure out how you can use some of these tools and apply them to stuff that you either are doing now or might need to do in the future. Not just because the ATAC tool itself is cool and powerful and gives you valuable capabilities, but because I think it's a great way to develop, for lack of a better word, an ATAC mindset. I would like you to be thinking about geospatial awareness and collecting maps ahead of time. Yes, ATAC is actually pretty good for James Bond, somebody who does things on the fly and is able to like collect a secret micro SD card and install it on collected devices that he picks up along the way. And those napkin sketches, take a quick photo of those and drop them in. Yes, you can do that on the fly without any other tools. That's one of the things that makes ATAC powerful. But it is so much more powerful when you preload it with better stuff, actual floor plans, actual 3D models of stuff, and download the maps that you want on the devices that you're going to need. So that's kind of where that ATAC mindset comes in, is a level of preparedness. So if you're going to a conference, download a map of the convention center. If you're going to be going to a giant mall and it's not going to have very good signs, just snap a picture of that mall map. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to drop it into ATAC and rubber sheet it into the exact position and create a data package and send it to all of your kids, but just have that on your phone. And you don't even need to use ATAC. If you need to refer to it, you can just bring it up in the gallery. You can just text it or email it to people that aren't using ATAC. That is the kind of ATAC mindset that I want to personally develop, and I think you guys should develop as well. Yeah, water's rising. Time to start collecting your maps. When we shot this video and I went to pull some B-roll, I discovered that there's a bunch of YouTubers that have built spy briefcases for James Bond, kind of like this, although this is probably more practical. It actually has a lot more capability inside. And if I were going to build version 2, I would definitely go with a more powerful Wi-Fi radio, get a little bit more range, maybe a few devices, but the biggest area to improve would be the cameras. The Wise cameras that we were using used to work great offline. Now they want to talk to the cloud. This is something that happens with IP cameras over time, so you got to kind of stay on top of your kit. I need to find some better IP cameras for this particular application. And then I'd also probably add a TAC server running on a Raspberry Pi that could run in here with all of the stuff connected. That would be an improvement. And then there's random other gadgets that we could add. They're things that belong in briefcases.
Ah, yes, the legendary 007 wit. Or at least half of it.